Hi stamping friends, welcome back. Sandi here. Today I have another Copic Quickie for you, and I just got the Simon Says Stamp November card kit, and it's got this awesome Woodland Whimsy stamp set in it. These little critters are adorable, there's great sentiments, and I love those trees. So guess what, we're playing with those first. I start by using my MISTI to stamp these images onto some Neenah Solar White 80-pound cardstock. I really like that for Copics, and I'm using Memento ink because it is Copic friendly and it won't smear on alcohol inks. So we'll get that all stamped up and we'll start our coloring. I'm starting with the E25, that's my darkest brown, and I'm going to use that as my shadows. Normally I flood the whole thing, but when I'm doing these types of images I like to go from the shadows out. So you want to put the darkest color, the darkest brown, into where you think the shadows are going to be on your image, and I'm kind of playing around. I got to go around all those little white dots on her little behind. I think it's a her. And so you want to work in small areas as well because you want to be able to move the ink around, and this is quite a small image, so if you're kind of quick you can do the entire thing at one go. So I'm starting, as I said, with the E25, and I only used 5 markers for this entire card and 2 ink pads to complete the entire thing. So this is a really easy card, and it's a great way of practicing how to color with Copics and where to put your shadows, etc. So here we are, we're almost finished with the brown. Then I'm going to switch over to the next color, which is the E33. And you want to start the E33 in the darker ink and pull it out towards the center of the deer. And that's how you start to blend. And it's not going to look really blended until we do our second layer. So I'm going around with the E31 now, and that's my third color, blending into the lighter and again pulling from the darker ink into the lighter. And then I'm going to my final one, which is the E51, and that's going to kind of create my highlight. So it looks like the sun is shining on that part of the little deer. And so here we go again. I'm going back to the beginning, starting with the E25, and I'm going to do a second layer of color over my entire little deer. And you'll see that it blends a lot better the second time around. Sorry, my camera's having a hard time focusing. I should have put something darker in there. Too much white. So there is my second color, my E33. And again, I'm pulling that brown towards the center, blending it as I go. And then I'm going to switch to the next lighter color, which is my E31. And then finally, I'm going back over and blending my highlights with the E51. And you'll notice, if you go back and look at the previous single layer of color, that this blends a lot easier and looks a lot better than the first layer. It's just getting the ink right into the paper and letting it blend around. Finally, I'm adding some R32, a little bit of pink, just to the center of his ears. And then I've gone back in with the 51 and done his little tummy. And I'm using the 25 for his hooves and his nose. For the trees, I'm going to use the same colors. I'm starting again with the 25, and I'm using the flicking technique as well as drawing a line down the left side of each of the trees. And I'm adding a little bit of color on the right-hand side as well. Birch trees are kind of cool to color. You can just kind of go wild. It doesn't really matter. And I'm adding where the lines are in the trees, I'm adding some of the dark brown in there as well. So I do one tree at a time, that way I can blend the colors again a little bit. So I'm doing this first layer, and then I'm going to switch over to my E33, and I'm going to add the second layer. Again, I'm flicking just a little bit and adding dots on the right hand side where the other color was, just kind of around it a little bit. And doing this adds a little bit of shadow to the tree. So I'm just going to finish that one, and then I come back in with the E31, my lightest of the browns, or second lightest of the browns, and I'm going to add just a titch of that as well. And it helps with the depth perception of making the trees look a little bit rounder. And so once you're finished with all this coloring, there are no dies as of yet, but Simon usually comes out with them shortly after the kits are done. So I fussy cut these out. It only took a few minutes. and they were very easy to cut out. No big problems there at all. A little tip for you: when I cut out images, I like to take my Tombow black marker and go around the edges and get rid of all the white edges on pieces that are going to stick up a little bit. I did the deer, but I didn't do the trees because the trees have basically a white background to them anyway, so it's not necessary. And here I used my gel pen just to make those little spots on his behind a little bit whiter. Isn't he cute? I just love him. Next, we'll work on the card base. I am using the thick Simon Says stamp white cardstock, 4 1/4 by 11, scored and folded at 5 1/2. And then I also used the Stitch Slopes and Hills dies to create my little snowbank, and I did that off camera. It's just a quick die cut. Now I'm using my life-changing brushes, love those things, and Distressed Oxides in Gathered TWIGS. Yes, I got that right. Sorry, I don't have my glasses on. And I'm just kind of roughly sponging a background. It doesn't need to be perfect because the trees are going to go over top of it. There's going to be a sentiment, etc. Now I'm using a little bit of white acrylic paint, and I'm going to mix it with a bit of water, and I'm going to flick it onto my card front with my paintbrush to create a little bit of snow falling. And it also kind of lines up and coordinates with the deer's behind with all those little dots. So I thought it was a nice way to kind of pull the card together. So I'm cleaning my stamps with my absorber because I'm going to take them off and I'm going to do the sentiment on my card front now that it's dry. And for the original card that I showed you, I used the stamps from the set, but now I'm going to use a Christmas card set. It's called Inside Christmas Greetings, also from Simon Says Stamps. And I'm just showing you that it's really easy to make this into a Christmas card. It would also make a fabulous man's birthday card in the wintertime, that kind of thing, if you have someone in the family who hunts or likes nature. So what I'm doing is I am checking the lines on the front of my MISTI to make sure that my sentiment is on there straight. And again, I'm using my black ink and I'm going to stamp this. And I end up doing it twice just to make sure it's good and crisp. Yay, now we have all our pieces. We can start putting our card together. So I'm going to show you a little trick to make one of the trees look like it's in the background. And I'm adding adhesive to my snow pile there. And I'm going to set that aside for a second because I'm going to put the skinny little tree in first. So I put the big one on the left-hand side and I dry fit it because I'm not ready to glue it down yet. Add some white glue to the back of the skinny one and glue it down first onto the card, leaving a space between the two. And then we're going to take the snowbank and we're going to put it over top of that tree so that it really looks like it's in the background. So that's the first part of it. And because it's skinny, it looks like it's farther away. So then I'm adding the glue to the thickest of the trees. Make sure you've got all of your shading on the left-hand side. And I'm adding that. When I put the third one in, I make sure that the space between the two are not the same. I want this one much closer. I think it adds more interest that way. So I've got a wide band between the first two and a skinny one between the second two. For the deer, I folded some glue dots and put them on the back of him because glue dots will help it pop up just a tiny little bit, but not as far as if you're using foam tape. And once the glue is dry, you just want to flip it over and trim the trees. So we need to add a little bit of snow to the trees. And they weren't there when we did this initially, so back with the paint and just adding a little bit more flicking, and I'm covering the deer a little bit just so he doesn't get all covered. So there you go, there's my two cards for today. One, the original one with the original sentiment, and then a Christmas one. And everything I used is listed underneath in the links below, and there's a PDF on my blog for you. Thanks so much for stopping in. Until next time, toodles.